Hello there, guys. How's it going? Welcome to Breakfast All Day. Wonderful to see you. I am Christy. That is Alonso. Next up for us, we've got a really special treat. Oh my goodness. If you can't get enough of Dune, and really who can, there's so much of it. And yet there's also more. Dune 1984, the David Lynch version of Dune. We kind of jokingly floated this idea last week. Let's talk about the old Dune. And we're doing it.
Because you demanded it.
Yes, Alonso, tell us about the first Dune.
Okay, well, what Denis? I heard him say his own name, and now I forgot. Villeneuve. Okay, all right. It's
like Catherine Deneuve. Villeneuve.
Yes, Villeneuve. All right. No, Villeneuve is how he says it, actually, because it is two words, I guess, in French. Anyway, he gets two movies to tell this story, maybe three, who even knows? But David Lynch, bless his heart, had to try and cram it into one. This movie is probably most famous in cinematic history as basically being the reason that Blue Velvet exists. Dino De Laurentiis said that Lynch could make his passion project if he would first make this multi-million-dollar epic saga that was clearly intended to be one of those movies like, hey, it's like Star Wars, even though the novel came before Star Wars, but when you see the movie you think the movie's borrowing from Star Wars, but it didn't. We are given lots and lots and lots of narration by Virginia Madsen as the princess, who is the daughter of the emperor, played by José Ferrer, and there's a lot of explaining who these people are, and the House of Atreides and the House of Harkonnen and the Dune, desert planet, Arrakis, the worms, the spice. So Kyle MacLachlan, in the first of several collaborations with David Lynch, plays young Paul Atreides. He must learn to uncover his own talents and take his rightful place as the Kwisatz Haderach. And there's a lot of palace intrigue and giant worms and desert storms and Sting in a metal Speedo and pugs and
space pug, yay,
all kinds to make the trip. And I had never seen this movie before, but I took a look at it before watching the new one, and what struck me the most about it is how much it feels like I told Christy this, the longest previously on Homeland ever made, because almost every single scene introduces a new character or a new plot point, and so you don't really get to soak into anything. You're constantly learning something new. And so that doesn't give the movie a lot of room to really make these characters into anything. You're kind of told who they are and what they do early on. There's one guy who is a traitor, but beyond that, everybody pretty much just like follows that line for the whole movie. And so when something happens like Paul falling in love with, the woman that he sees in his dreams, played by Sean Young, Chani, then Virginia Madsen tells us they fell in love over a shot of the two of them smooching and looking really gorgeous. And it's like, okay, I guess they fell in love. We never saw them have a conversation or anything, but right. Virginia Madsen says it, I believe it, and that settles it. So, because this is a David Lynch movie, he was coming off of, Eraserhead and The Elephant Man. So it was pretty early in his career, but you get a lot of the sort of visual splendor you would expect from him. Dave pointed out when we were talking about this on Linoleum Knife, the weirdly analog and unusual, just mechanical objects. This is a guy who turned David Bowie into a steam kettle in the third season of Twin Peaks. Mm-hmm. So just like things that you would do, just like weapons or objects that in another movie would just be sort of whatever. In this movie, you're like, what even is that? How does it work? What's it doing? And there's also a lot of internal monologuing that I guess they had to keep from the book. So people are constantly whispering things at themselves and you just hear it in their heads, and then it's on the soundtrack. And that's how we know the agenda of what's really going on. So this is kind of nutty, but I kind of loved it.
So yeah, it is so David Lynchy. It's funny when you look at it in retrospect, you recognize so many of his stylistic signatures in terms of like just the surreal imagery and like the extreme close-ups. And you mentioned, how kind of cheesy things look. And I wonder if in retrospect that was intentional. I wonder if that was meant to be like intentionally kind of off-putting, disarming in a way that so much of his work is. I mean, like David Lynch's films like don't really welcome you in. They want to put you on edge. They want you to question and feel uncomfortable and startled. And I wonder if that is the reason that like so much like the effects look so cheesy, like the thing where they can press a button on their wrist shield, and create a force field around themselves. It looks like super blocky. Like now we know it looks like Minecraft people. Like they're all like rectangular and blocky. But clearly the technology existed back then to make it look better than that.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think ultimately it's kind of cooler than the equivalent in the 2021 version where they have sort of a blue cloud around them. Yeah, I mean, part of it is, yes, 1984 special effects are 1984 special effects, but at the same time, yeah, I think some of this is clearly intentional. There's a lot of practicals here, which I think are really interesting and shocking even at times. And definitely, you know, it's interesting to see the actors who are like David Lynch stars, but you don't see them in a lot of other people's stuff because it's a very specific kind of performance that he wants that doesn't necessarily translate to what other people are doing. You're definitely seeing that here with a cast of like, this is a very sort of Tony cast of, Francesca Annis and Patrick Stewart pre-Star Wars, and Wolfgang Peterson, who I think Jürgen Prochnow, and
Dean Stockwell.
What did I say? Oh, sorry, Star Trek. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry.
Yes,
they're different. Yeah, Dean Stockwell.
But then Dean Stockwell and Jack Nance and like people who are sort of would be his kind of his ensemble company.
Linda Hunt.
Right. Very young Alicia Witt.
Right. And the whole thing with her is so trippy. Like her evil child is totally like crucial in a David Lynch movie. Like anything like that weird and that off-putting. I wonder if people watched it back then. I didn't see it back when it came out. I watched it after the new Dune. Chris and I watched it and we're like, this is kind of rad. But I wonder if in the time, part of why people didn't like it, and it's at like 44% on the tomato meter, is because like they just didn't get it. Like they didn't get what he was going for with the weirdness. It's meant to be weird. It's meant to be funny. Like Sting is giving a funny performance.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. I think people didn't know what to make of it because it's so singular. And like in time, as he made more movies, you can look back on this and see how it fits in his filmography.
You have that big fish alien whose mouth is very, anatomical, let's say, with the pink smoke coming out of it. And,
oh yes.
Yeah. I mean, clearly he's like trying to turn, I still haven't seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, but this is that level of like, we're turning this into something visionary, and this is not going to be your regular sort of space opera, but and I think the 2021 version is trying to sort of like do that, but in the opposite direction, like as subdued as possible, as monochromatically as possible, and not as sort of trippy and psychedelic, or not even psychedelic, but hallucinogenic, let's say. Now, do you know the legend about how this film was released, or how? No. So when it opened in 1984, and I remember this vividly, I didn't see it, but people were talking about it. And Dave actually worked in a theater that showed it, and he had to do this.
Oh, God.
When you walked into the theater, you were handed a glossary.
That's right.
You were handed a glossary of like terms and who the houses are and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, imagine running into a movie with like with 2 minutes to go. The trailers have started. You got like a big popcorn and a soda in your hand, and somebody's handing you a list of terminology. You're like, I didn't know there was going to be a quiz.
Right.
So I think that was part of why this movie was doomed, because people just thought, oh, this is too much work.
Also, we didn't have cell phones back then to like shine a little flashlight on our card. So are you like holding it up to the light of the screen to figure out like who is in the House of Atreides? Who are these people?
I think you were supposed to get there early and read it in your seat quietly before the movie started. I don't know.
That's really funny. Yeah, but as you say, it's totally rushed. It's just like hitting all of its bullet points. Yeah. I've never read the book Dune, but I think clearly trying to cram the entirety of it into 1 2-hour movie was a complicated, problematic endeavor.
2021 Dune, one movie in, 2.5 hours in, we still haven't met the Emperor. And we haven't met the Sting character. We haven't met Fade Rotha yet. So it's like,
and no one's used the word Muad'Dib, right?
No, we haven't gotten to Muad'Dib yet. Haven't gotten to any of that stuff. They only throw in weirding in the last like 15 minutes. So there's this movie's trying to cover a lot of ground. And so yes, it is flawed. It has a lot of things that don't quite work, but it's the kind of mess that only a cinematic visionary can make. Like if some hack had made this movie, if Peter Hyams had directed this movie, who that same Christmas had 2010, the year we make Contact in theaters, which was also misbegotten, but it would have been even more just sort of forgettably like, they tried to adapt this weird book and it just didn't work. And this movie, maybe it doesn't all work, but there is something riveting about it.
It's distinctive.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
It is in its weirdness. It's more interesting for sure. Yeah. So I it looks like shit and it's rushed, but I had a good time. I'll say 7.
I will also say 7.
Okay.
Yeah, it is imperfect, but it is fascinatingly so, unlike so many movies that are just sort of forgettably average.
Yeah. So the original Dune, if you have never seen it and you went to see the new Dune, you want to see the old Dune, it's on HBO Max.
Yes. And apparently there's some edit that exists online that's called like the Spice something cut that I've heard people say they like better. I have not tracked that one down.
Oh, wonder how it's different.
Beware of the TV edit that Universal created, because that one actually Lynch took his name off. That one was a directed by Alan Smithy joint.
What happened to that one?
It aired on television. Yeah. I don't know if anybody ever put it on home video or whatever, but this is the same regime at Universal that also tried to fuck with Brazil. Because this is around the same time in the 80s. And so in fact, like the TV edit of Brazil is on the Criterion, because that's the one that Universal wanted to release theatrically. And there's a really good commentary track sort of explaining what cuts Universal made and why, and how it completely undermines what that movie's even about. But yeah, so Dune, legendary failure, but still legendary. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media at BeFastAllDay. And check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. This month, for our Off the Menu, we gave our subscribers a choice of horror films, and they selected Julia Ducournau's Raw, her debut film, which came out a few years before her Palme d'Or winner Titan. We're also talking about TV right now. It's the morning show, but we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. And of course, you can watch videos like this one without the commercials. So, there's a lot waiting for you over there at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.